order. Got 6 trustees present. We're ready to begin our agenda prep.
Good evening. Item 4 for October 16th will be our first report that Karen will present, the financial integrity.
And just so you know, it's a superior achievement, and we made a perfect score of 100. So
Wow, good job. Good job.
great finance team.
Item 7, academic update. We'll have a dual language update presented by Benjamin Grijalva. Item A. Item B, Coleman will be doing a construction.
Yeah, to let you know where we are as far as with costs and stuff and estimating.
Item C, we'll be doing a presentation regarding CW local policy, which is covers the renaming. Mr. Watson will handle that. And just as a reminder, he brought this up probably about a month ago, 2 months ago, where we kind of talked about TASB doing a complete comprehensive review of all of our policies. And so I signed the contract a couple of weeks ago. We figure we probably would want to pull this out and move it up to fast track it so that we could get kind of a committee going regarding the new elementary. But I did just want to put that out there that this is part of a bigger comprehensive policy analysis. And you're going to see item E, which is EIE, which is what y'all passed earlier. TASB has come back and given us some recommendations on just changing language, not the policy, but we have tables, and they said you may not need the tables in your policy. So all this kind of goes together, but we will have information. You know, we'll look at other districts and see what they do to have their committees put together, surveys and things like that. We'll get all that for y'all.
So this is what TASB, you say TASB had recommended that we review all our policies?
It's been several years since we've looked at all the policies.
So this is what we're doing at this, and this happens to be one of them that
Correct.
you're saying?
Yes.
And so you're saying that you're going to bring us some examples of what other schools do in this respect?
Yeah, I think it's probably, as boards, it's probably important for me to present you what other districts are doing that may be better practices. I know, having gone through about 6 of these renamings in Houston ISD, I know that naming or renaming can always be very emotional for the community. And so I think one of the things I know that Houston did was really good was put together a good committee that the board would send and would go through a process of looking at all the proposals and seeking proposals.
So, but we're not putting a committee together right now. You're
No.
just bringing us some.
No,
Okay.
we're going to bring you samples.
Mr. Superintendent, or Ms. Cantu, before we move on to the next item, just because I'm not familiar with what process took place during the naming of Mendez Elementary School, can we get, I guess, whatever historical information there is on what happened the last time? Just so that some,
We had a committee,
yeah, but just so that some
and
of
they
us who
came back
weren't-
with three names, I think, that recommendations.
Well, I think they follow the policy that we now
That we have.
have.
Right.
You know, back then, that was 2006, 2007, when was that?
yeah.
Or 8
I
or
don't remember
9
exactly.
Well, I mean,
We could
yeah.
go back and check, but
And I, know the anecdotal stories and who was on it, who could have been on it, so on and so forth, but having an actual written memo or something like that just to
You have
have.
it?
Well, we
Cindy
do-
probably has the history, so we can get that.
we do have certain things, but the committee did review everything, came back with recommendations, but also the public came with their public comments. So, it's just, I'm interested in knowing what others do. That I don't know that we're doing anything different, but
Who knows? Well,
I don't know. It was good.
This is just a policy, I think, that we're looking at. I don't think we're talking about anything specific. We just want to put it on the timeline because we know.
This
We
is
know
coming
y'all
up.
are getting it on the timeline, so yes.
Yeah, just to educate myself on what happened last time, since
Correct.
I wasn't here 10 years ago or whenever it took
There was
place.
4 of us that weren't here before. We should- and only numbers.
Okay. And then I believe that Karen will present on October 16th options by then.
Yeah, we have Coleman, to give y'all some options, as far as what we could do with central office, different pricing for y'all to consider. He's
Item,
gonna run a couple of different scenarios.
and item E again is y'all pass the policy, then in part of their review, we have a new representative, Angela Bauman, who's tied to us. And so she made some suggestions on things maybe that should just be administrative regulations and not in the policy that we can cover. So, and Monica's been working with her, and so has Nicole, so we'll have those updates for y'all. Item 8, we'll just go over the minutes from October 2nd and approval of special call board meeting from today and also from September 18th. Currently, we have nothing for item B. We just keep that on the agenda. We did have a teacher who resigned for family emergency last week, and so just in case we do happen to find somebody to replace, we kept that on there.
And also Superintendent Cardona, we also are reviewing class size count, so there's a potential of one or more waivers that we might need. I just received the information today, the latest update, so.
Item 9, section 9, Karen.
That's going to be added. Last year when we considered waivers, we got a comprehensive list of class size in each grade, in each classroom across the 6 elementaries, I recall. Do you recall
Yeah,
that
well,
document?
yes, sir.
I mean, I'm probably going to vote against it anyway, but I would like to have that information for consideration.
Sure. Okay, we'll provide that for you.
If that's going to be added to the agenda.
Absolutely.
And
And it'd be good to have it before the meeting. you
Okay.
know, Send it to us ahead of time so we can look at it.
Absolutely. It changes daily, but we'll send you the snapshot of that day.
before we move on to the next item, I know that in previous votes, we've talked about hiring the IAs or the TAs or whatever that we're calling those paras that are in those classes. I'd like to know the information of like how many of those positions we've approved to have, and then how many are actually filled and those TAs are actually in the classroom. So say we've approved 6 or what have you. Have we hired all 6 of those, or do we have the funding for them, but we're still waiting to fill those positions? That type of information.
Were you talking about the secondary ones, the ones that we were talking about?
Think of the ones we approved last month.
Yeah, for the elementary. So
Oh,
however many of those we approved,
special ed.
have those been filled
Fifth grade.
already?
So I can provide you an update now. Would you want it in a different form? But you approved 7 positions and we filled 2.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you're still working on it?
Actually, I offered both of those positions today.
Okay. Easy enough.
You offered the 2 and the.
2 of the 7.
So are we getting applications for the other?
We're getting applications and we're ramping up our advertisement and our recruitment because filling 7 positions this time of year is not
Not easy.
not easy. So we're going to some different levels of recruitment for those positions, make sure we can track the best.
Yes.
Item A, consider approval of budget amendments. Karen,
At this point, we don't have any, but I didn't, like I said, I leave them there just in case there's something that comes up. And depending on what happens tonight, I may have one for the next meeting.
If there's action taken?
Yes.
item B.
This is it says it's foreclosed property, but it's actually it's just needing a signature on some property that we had, I guess, that the city, so I need to get a little bit more information on. It's not really a foreclosed property where we're getting any money. It's gonna be an item with the city, not the same property that we're talking about. I think that they were gonna, ask for our approval for something on that property.
Was that the one that we?
No, it's not the same property. Remember the one that I brought
They
back
wanted to
twice?
buy?
Yes, and they wanted, no, it's not that property, it's a
Is this the
different piece of
property by the Dairy Queen? The little piece of plot by the Dairy Queen right
I
here?
think so, yes.
Right up here by the highway?
By the Cuauhtemoc?
Yes.
So are we gonna change the description to match?
Yes, yes. I didn't pay attention to the way it's written on here. But yes, I will change the way it's written.
Well, how do you think it should be written?
I'm trying to look for the item. I'm sorry, I meant to have that for you tonight and. It says it's a tax resale deed and bid analysis.
Tax resale?
Tax resale deed and bid analysis for a San Marcos CISD struck off property for which we have received a bid offer. The bid we received is more than the original minimum bid at foreclosure, and therefore the resale does not require formal action, but the district does need to approve the offer. But we're gonna bring it to the board.
Before the next item, Karen, do we have information to where you could provide an update on the tax foreclosed property that the city wants to buy from us? Like, do we have to approve the sale of that? Does the city buy our portion of it?
So you want an update on that piece of property?
Yep.
Okay.
C.
Item C, we will have to you the approval of the campus and district improvement plans.
DEIC met on September the 26th and reviewed all of the campus improvement plans and the district improvement plans. They looked for any type of typographical errors and any sections needing clarification in regards to the plan that aligns with our core commitments and with the data received regarding STAR and EOC scores. And we sent the revised ones back out to the DEIC on Friday. They have until Wednesday to give their final approval, and then we will send those to all of you electronically this coming Friday prior to the board book. So you have from Friday until the board meeting to review them, and then we'll also put them in the board book.
So will they be in the board book if we pick them up on Friday, or?
We were going to send them to you electronically on Friday, and then we'll also put them in the board book when that becomes available the following week.
Okay.
So this way you will have them.
Georgianne, don't make me a copy, please. I don't want 1,000. I'll just look at it electronically. I don't need 1,000 copies of anything.
Item D, consideration and possible action regarding SHAC creating subcommittee to study possible increase in recess time. Trustee Halsey submitted this, so I think we're already in the process of forming committees. Jennifer is here to answer any questions. Item E also is consideration and possible action regarding eliminating homework at the elementary school level. Again, this more falls in line with the DEIC committee, the District Improvement Committee, but this was submitted by Trustee Halsey as well.
So is she gonna do a presentation on her items with information, or is she expecting, I mean, there are items for action, and last time there was an item for action that was Ms. Halsey's administrative idea. We didn't get anything until we just showed up at the meeting, and then we were asked to potentially vote on it, and it was awkward. So if the administration's not gonna be presenting on this, which I assume it's not because it's not your item, I don't, just procedurally, President Cantu, how do you envision that going during the meeting?
I would hope that the admin would make a recommendation for some kind of resolution, but I thought we were just studying it at this point.
Well, it says
What's possible action?
possible action regarding
I
eliminating
don't know
homework.
how we
I
can
don't-
take action on it if y'all are still studying it.
We're putting the committees together, and that'll take at least a month to review everything until the November board meeting.
So we would be able to take action until the next meeting if we wanted to. So that probably needs to be moved from this agenda to next month's agenda.
Which one?
The two,
Oh, D and E?
is that what you're asking me? How do
Yeah,
I
but-
foresee this? Because, I mean, I don't think admin's ready to make a recommendation if they are just now setting up committees to look at
And
it.
you're saying DEIC would look at the homework issue?
Yes, and so DEIC, I'll get with the co-chair of the DEIC because their next meeting technically is not until November 28th, so the subcommittee will need to meet prior to our November board meeting a couple of times.
Yeah, I would like a presentation from Ms. Halsey about some research on both of these items. If she's wanting to keep it on this agenda, because I don't want to just show up and be talked to and say the research shows. I want to see the research.
Plus a study of what we're doing right now, like what are the recess times at the 6 campuses, 7 campuses? What are the homework, what are the campus, as I understand right now, and Superintendent Cardone, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are campus-based decisions on homework limits. And I think they vary. You've allowed some discretion for, I know there's a preference that it be maybe less than it was at one time, but you've allowed the campuses some discretion. So I would want to know what's going on right now before we just even considered some sort of blanket ban.
Some action on it. I would think that Ms. Halsey wanted us to bring it to the table for discussion. They have time to do some research and committee work and then bring it back, but I don't think we could take action like this month.
So
I don't know why it's under possible action.
The only information that I have, and I'm the second trustee on both of these items because I was looped into that email thread, and I'm not going to speak for Ms. Halsey. I just had the emails, and I've said on numerous occasions, any trustee who requests something, I will second. But I mean, I'm reading into possible action as in eliminating homework or taking a formalized vote to do something or create policies, I think, extrapolating a lot. And although it's interesting and entertaining to say, you know, Ms. Halsey needs to have a presentation, I mean, I think just having the discussion and providing possible direction, I don't know if we need to get that specific, but at least that's where I am on either of these issues. And if it is a DEIC is already looking at this, or this is something for the School Health Advisory Council, then I think the administration can weigh in at that time, and if there's no action taken by the board, then there's no action. I don't think because we have an agenda item, we're going to do something. Just because it's an agenda item, I don't think that means we have to do something.
Ms. Costilla, you have your hand?
Yes, you were talking earlier and maybe I'm off track right now regarding having a meeting regarding policy procedures for the board. I think that's very necessary to have policy procedures for the board. I see items in here that could very easily be brought to his attention. I'd hate to be thinking that our audience or our individuals out there, or thinking that you're not doing your job. I mean, this is the CHAC committee. I mean, I'm assuming that they're going to have to be doing their job and meeting and bringing back some issues that we could tell you this is something that we're interested in, taking it to the committee and having them bring us back something for us to decide, do we need action on it? The same thing with what are we talking about eliminating homework? If we need to be talking to you or to another committee, do we need to be eliminating? If somebody has an interest, then we need to do that. I just think that hopefully we'll have this policy for procedures for the board soon, because I don't want to trample in your area, Mr. Superintendent. We hired you to do a job, and yes, you've been here for a while, and I'm assuming that if I have a concern, I'm going to bring it to you. But for me to be deciding whether I need to eliminate homework or not, or whether I need to study increasing recess time, I need to bring it to you, and you need to tell me. Let me bring it to the people, let me bring you back that information. I just have a real uncomfortable that I'm traveling in your area where I shouldn't be. I know my role.
I agree. I feel like we're micromanaging. I mean, when I have concerns, I come and talk to you. I don't expect you to follow what my concern is, but here's my concern. And what you decide to do with it, that's your job. That's why we pay you those big bucks.
That's right.
That's why we hired you. So
Well, just so y'all are aware, we had already begun this, you know, Ms. Dre had already begun at least the homework, I'll speak for that. you know, having a discussion, and then for whatever reason, somebody took that and made an issue in the community about something, and it was a principal that miscommunicated with her staff. We dealt with that. But having said that, that should come from the principals and the teachers themselves bringing up things they feel need to be addressed. And so we were already in the process of having these discussions with the faculties, but this was put on here. And just for the record, because the email was referenced, you know, I did state that it needed to not be agendized. But there was a move, and current board policy states, if 2 board members want it on, then it goes on there, which is what we did. But I did put an email that I didn't feel we need to agendize these 2 topics, that we could incorporate it as we're moving forward and then come up with policy advisory recommendations to the board. And some things could be administrative, which we would hope we would be proactive, and then some things we might need to create policy around. So that's where this kind of came out of.
It's also been in the news.
The homework is a big deal. I
I've
will
heard
take
it in the news.
part of the blame because I tweeted a really good article about no
yeah.
homework and things like that. Earlier this summer, I tweeted something, and so I think some of that has kicked up momentum.
But that's a normal way things flow, is that the professionals who have education, experience, and got their degrees and that sort of thing would study new trends and determine how that fits in our campus, in our environment, with our kids. And then it would come to us as like, this is what we're doing, or this is what we need from you. This is not the way things should normally go, where we would, I mean, this says possible actions. So if I read that as a parent, I'm thinking, okay, well, the board of 7, some of you have been in a classroom, but most of us haven't, is going to make a determination that on this date there will be no more homework at the elementary school level. That just doesn't seem like the normal way things flow. So I think it should come back to us from you guys, and if some sort of long period of time lags and the sponsoring trustees get impatient, then we can have that conversation again. But I would encourage either Ms. Halsey or Mr. Arredondo to allow us to move this, either to eliminate the possible action, and we can have a discussion, I guess that won't hurt anything, or to move this to a time when the administration's ready to bring it back.
We should provide time for that.
As only the seconding trustee, I don't want to speak on Ms. Halsey's behalf, but if President Cantu wants to reach out and clarify the agenda language, I mean, there is a policy in place. I seconded Ms. Halsey's request, and she was impassioned enough to request these 2 items for whatever reason. And so, you know, the policy is what the policy is, but Ms. Cantu does have the authority to remove the items and to move them to a separate date. But I would rather she communicate directly with Ms. Halsey to do that.
And I will be happy to communicate with Ms. Halsey regarding those 2 items. And at this point, I would recommend to her that we take them off until admin is ready for a recommendation on them.
Or,
Because it's on the table for discussion, y'all are already working on it, and so eventually you're gonna come back to us with some recommendations.
So does that mean it's coming off the agenda, or does that mean you're asking Ms. Halsey's permission?
Right now, because of board policy, I would have to ask her permission, wouldn't I? Board
You
procedures.
can postpone it as board president.
We could move it to another month or 2 months until we're ready for a presentation from admin. And you're already working on this.
We're putting the committees together. That email was going out this week.
And we don't want to have a committee meeting every week to rush it for one month. So as far as I'm concerned, it needs to be moved indefinitely until we have.
out of courtesy for Ms. Halsey, I would ask that we do not decide on her agenda items
Well, she should
tonight without communicating with her first.
I mean, this is agenda prep, and 3 of these things are her proposals.
And we
we're
moved
trying to
it-
have a conversation about it. She's not here, and we're like, oh, we can't do anything.
And we
Ms. Halsey's
moved
chair's
agenda
empty.
prep because she had a prior obligation for her family, and in other instances, we've moved agenda prep to accommodate other issues trustees have had with families. So I think it's a little bit disingenuous to allude that Ms. Halsey is not she does not want to be here, this is
No,
not
she's
a
a Boy
priority
Scout.
for her.
I'm not alluding to anything. I'm just saying there's 6 of us here. We're trying to have a conversation about our collective agenda, and we can't even do anything about it because the idea is like, well, first got to reach out to Ms. Halsey.
Well, I mean, and there's a policy in place, and we've had board presidents in the past who've used their authority as board president to delay items, and we've been on the receiving end of that behavior, and it wasn't appreciated by those trustees. So to do it now, because of other issues with trustees, I think is a little bit inappropriate.
Well, there's
For
nothing that
anyone.
keeps Ms. Cantu from talking to her about it and say, you know, we discussed this and we would like to move these till we receive
we have-
information.
And that's
Do
what I
we have
said was
recommendation
speak
from
with
admin?
Ms. Halsey
what-
before a decision
yeah.
was made, but somebody asked, so does that mean we're removing it tonight? And I don't think that would be appropriate without speaking to her first.
And we have a week to work on this. That's why we have these agenda items to get ready for next week.
2 weeks.
I mean, 2 weeks for the.
Thank you.
Well, I specifically asked Ms. Halsey or Mr. Arredondo to voluntarily move it, since that seems to be the will of the consensus of the group. And you, by seconding the proposal, you have it on the agenda until one of you makes that decision. So I don't think that you can say, well, I can't do anything about it, because you could.
I mean, I could, but because it was her agenda item, I feel it'd be inappropriate for me to make that decision unilaterally without talking to Ms. Halsey first. So I don't want to withdraw my second tonight without speaking to her. Now, I can speak to her tonight or tomorrow or next week and withdraw it. That's a possibility, but I'm not going to make any commitment right now to doing that.
But I think we're forgetting the point that we do have a board president here that has the authority to postpone, not remove, but postpone an item for a prior month or following month. That is within her realm of responsibility.
And I can do
She's
that.
not removing it. She has no authority to remove it. She has the authority to postpone the item.
And
And
that's-
that's what she's saying. That she will talk to Ms. Halsey, explain to her that the committees are being formed, that the item is going to be postponed. If at a point in time Ms. Halsey wants to remove it, that's her prerogative to do that. But your authority right now is to say we're going to postpone it, given the fact that we're waiting information from the committees. That's all I'm saying.
I thought I said that.
Yeah.
That
And
we're
I think
going
that's
to
where
take
it needs
off.
to be
Not-
at.
Not take it off permanently,
No.
but postpone it.
Postpone it.
I've already made that decision. Good.
Item F.
So yeah, I requested this item several months ago. I think prior to Ms. Cantu's election, we had the discussion and the board voted 3-3 and then unanimously to hire an additional GT facilitator. And quite frankly, I was not in the minority of that vote. It was a split vote. But I think it's time, with the changes happening in GT, that the board allocates the funds to hire GT specialists at all of our elementary schools, especially given that predominantly the underserved campuses are the ones who have the part-time GT facilitators. And when we talk about what's best for all kids and what's best for all students, I don't think to increase those numbers of gifted and talented identified students is to have a part-time employee there trying to do that and make the changes that the administration is moving forward with. So, I mean, there's going to be some budgetary explanations, and I'm not going to create a PowerPoint or do anything like that, but are the votes there for the board to approve the funds for additional GT specialists at the elementary school so they're not part-time?
2. Is that right?
I think there's 4 now.
4
yeah.
at 6 campuses.
So it'd be 2 to make a full-time at each.
In order, I guess, for the administration and consideration of this item, I would like information on how those positions will be utilized, and the timing of an ideal hire. And I think with or without this item, this is probably something that happens in the next academic year. So I think my specific questions are, why now and what benefits are gained from that. I'd also like to know or get an updated information on the distribution of gifted and talented students by campus at the elementary level. I understand there's, I don't know, I've just heard some anecdotal stuff. I think in the prior meeting that you told us there were 142 at Crockett, I think that came up. But I don't personally know the numbers at every campus. If you've given that to us, then it should be easy to give it to me again. But I don't know those, and I would like to know that because I don't, if there's, for instance, a very small number at one campus, 30, 35 or something, I continue to be not sure how we're going to utilize a full-time person there. So that for the discussion, that would help me a lot. Whomever that is most appropriate for.
And how services are done now.
Right. What they're gonna do.
I
And what
think
they do now,
that
yeah.
some of this came from the GT meeting that was held at Crockett. And one of the staff mentioned that we didn't have a GT person at every school and that we probably needed an extra person or two.
This goes back to,
Somebody was there.
this goes back several years to a report done by a group of GT parents that was submitted to the board several years ago, because I have the report. So I think they've been recommending this for a couple of years now, but we actually hadn't done anything with the GT program. So, I mean, I will say that we'll get all that information, yes, but yes, I believe we were already working once again, as part of Deb Smith, as she's doing it, we would have probably have come to y'all with the recommendation for spring.
This would be for the next year's hiring
The
cycle.
next-
One,
It's-
just to be transparent on this agenda item too, I think it was a little bit, it put the impetus on the board when a district employee said, well, there are several board members here gathered in the room, so talk to them when it comes to funding.
Correct.
So they essentially put it on us at that point, so here it is.
You know, so, yes.
So my question was gonna be, Mr. Superintendent, in regards to this item, is that because we've had conversations regarding DGT, so your administration was already going to be addressing this as well? At some point in time, I know you have a lot of things on your
Correct.
plate.
Correct.
That I know that we as a board, when we hired you, said, number one, a priority, and I know that's been added on and added on. I'm just saying is this something that was already, given the conversations that we had about GT, this is something that you were going to be
Correct.
addressing at some point in time? Thank you.
Y'all were already looking at this to make a recommendation?
Well, we began the process of, if you remember, we began the process of reaching out to Texas State, looking at people to come advise us on redoing the GT curriculum, right? So we started this, but we didn't have anybody we had somebody, they just didn't own the process. And then, so we had a personnel change, and then it became apparent that we needed somebody to own the process. Deb Smith was hired, and she's taken the ball and run with it. And I think she's doing a great job, and she was at that meeting also and when these things were said. But that's when the report was sent to me, was after that meeting.
So this is another item that can be.
We're still
posted.
gonna have an issue at Crockett, I'll just say that publicly, because it's not. They're gonna have 130-plus kids and one person. You know, what I would say is, as a principal, and he's a new principal, is look at his master schedule and how he puts his people. But there's also needs to be a move fundamentally to train more people to get them GT hours, because we just don't have the numbers.
Well, we know pullout is not an ideal program.
Right.
The send-in is a much better program.
So we're not really ready for action on this item either. Is that what I'm hearing from the board?
I mean, it's slightly different to me just because this is something we've already waded into, we've already done, it's been considered multiple times. So it doesn't hit me as D&E, I was like, well, I got the agenda today, I was like, what the heck is that? Like, what are we doing? F's a little different, this is another
Well,
GT discussion.
wanna-
I'm not, I was gonna move, I probably would have moved to table D&E or delay it if it stays on the agenda, but F, I think, is worthy of a discussion. We have heard a lot this is an issue that very much concerns our parents, and, hearing those concerns, that's a little bit
So we
different. I
can
have no
leave that
issue
one.
with that being on here to the extent
Everyone's
it matters
okay
to
with
me.
leaving that one on here?
Doesn't mean
That's
I might
fine,
vote for
whatever
it, but-
information the superintendent brings us,
Well,
in that
and
regard.
to hear from Ms. Smith with regard to, I'm fine freeing up more resources for GT, but, is this how she would use them today? I want y'all to design the solution.
Can do that. She's good at that.
and budget information.
Right.
We're going
Yeah.
deeper and deeper into
And if
it.
anything, at a minimum, this creates a placeholder in the budget for those two positions next academic year. At least it communicates that the board is willing to allocate the funds long-term for those positions.
Or the motion could be that it would be starting, you know, at the next academic, potentially. You know, we don't know where it would go.
Yeah.
But really for the next
Already
academic year.
starting to plan for next year, so this fits in nicely.
That's all of the agenda prep.
Yes.
Didn't make it.
Item
She's gonna be
3.
late.
Oh, she,
Goes really fast.
no, she's very slow.
Item 3, presentation and possible action regarding central office.
Yes, at the last board meeting, I did bring the board some information in regards to the air quality of the current building. So we did, in order for us to do anything with the building, we would need to move the attendants out. So we have been looking at property. We visited a couple of different properties, some of which were not, they didn't have, it wasn't complete in the inside. Some of them that would take a lot of restructuring to do the building. And then we came across one that is about 7,400 square foot, which you have in your packet, that we feel that would work very well for utilizing. So this would be a benefit to the district to merge them into this one location.
It did. So, are there any central administrative positions currently housed in anything that could be used as a classroom at an elementary campus?
What do you mean?
You know, like, I don't know where they're officing. Are there any people at any elementary campuses?
Yes.
Which ones?
We have special ed at the Mendez facilities.
Besides that, that's the sole example of an administrative person officing on a campus?
Right.
Okay. That was my first question. And then do we know how much square footage we're using right now for this building without the auditorium and for TLA?
I believe this building without the central office is 4,600 square feet without the, this portion. And then TLA is another,
So does this place have,
take your question.
place for us to have board meetings?
You can ask.
no, so for board meetings, there, we have two options. One, we could either do an MOU with the city and see if we could use their facility since they have their meetings on Tuesday nights. I can reach out to them and see. Otherwise, we do have the classroom that's at the high school that was kind of built to have these. It does already have a diocese and
We wouldn't have to really, I see what you're talking about, yeah.
so we could utilize that space, and for executive, we could go into either the conference room, that, there's a conference room that the counselors use, or right across the hall where special ed, they have an art room, and we could go across the hall for executive session.
And it could be set up, the video to video?
Yes, we would go ahead, and if we were gonna do that, we would go ahead and set it up in that classroom.
So-
We've already met with the high school to kind of, how would that work? It would still be a classroom, and then when we would have board meetings, they would have to move the tables out and move chairs in, but we would go ahead and set the cameras, and they would only be filming.
So this
during-
building would not have a spot or an area for board meetings, really?
No, we wouldn't,
Okay.
we would not utilize this building at all.
Office space.
The teacher that currently is in that classroom is a criminal justice teacher. who's a lawyer.
Yes.
So if we
And a high
did,
school graduate.
and a high school graduate, so if we did outfit that classroom, then conceivably she could use that for class to film her kids having mock trials and such. So it could be used as a teaching classroom.
I like the high school idea.
Me
No, I
too.
do
I
too.
prefer
I really
that
think
because the
that-
space would be big enough. At City Hall, there's not enough room for people to come in that want to speak and sit. It's kind of cramped every time I've gone there. So,
It
I think,
does, it's very small.
yeah,
That
there's only,
glassed-in area is too small
Well,
for us.
it's just that if it's feasible for us to, and have the space, I just don't see why we need to go to City Hall. I'm talking about the video portion part of it. Is it possible to do that? Because if it's not, then yeah, we need to go the other direction.
We can move it over there,
Yeah.
and we can go ahead and get it.
Mr. Wesson, do you anticipate we would realize any utility savings?
Yeah, from going to a different, yes, sir, I certainly do. I mean, of course, we're spending money on rent, but utility savings, this building is not very efficient.
Right, and do we have I don't know the status of the metering here. Is this building already a separate meter from the Centro facility? And how much it,
Portables are with the Centro.
okay, and
portion of it.
so this one's individually metered. How much is our average monthly bill in this facility?
We need to submit questions in advance.
Yeah, it's agenda prep though. We don't, doesn't have to be
Karen,
We have
everything
time-
right
We
now.
have time to wait because it's
corner
agenda.
of
part.
Mill and
I can
Uland.
certainly get you that answer.
Okay.
Sit on the corner.
It's, well, yes.
Yeah.
and how old are the portables for the CDC? I mean,
Over
20-plus years.
yeah, I was gonna say.
This
they're
one,
in sad
Mill and
shape.
Uland.
There,
Yes.
guys.
I know which one
Yes,
it is.
yes.
I think we were talking that the portables have become permanent. I don't
Yes,
think
they're not-
portables are
they're not
supposed to be.
They're not supposed to be.
They're permanent.
Some of these portables were here 20 years ago when I got here, and then I added the two newest ones within the first 2 years of me being here, so they're
At the Child
20 years
Development
old.
Center? Wow, that's too old.
Yeah, they're not
Worry
meant to
about-
be, 20 years for the life of a portable is a lot. They're meant for temporary use.
Like 5 to 10 years
10 years probably.
max. Ms. Villabondo, you had your
Yes.
hand up?
Do we have an idea how long it's gonna take for them to fix this building? And is this lease with this one, do we have to get a limited lease, or, I mean, are they gonna let us go on a,
We'll have to
Monthly
sign,
basis?
we'll have to sign a lease, but I think that as far as this building goes, that's gonna be something y'all have to work through over the next
Decide
You
which
know.
one to do.
several months of what y'all wanna do.
It's
So
gonna
we would
probably
have
be
to
the
sign a
balance of
lease?
the academic.
Yes.
For how long are they wanting a lease for?
They would probably want 3 years, but they'd probably take 2 years. But,
We're done signing
anything that we do here is gonna
Are we
take
gonna
that
add-
long.
really?
If we
That's what we're
approve to
gonna
do
do.
something.
Bring
Right,
back.
right.
What were the other, I don't know if
With
somebody
options.
asked, what were the other 4 sites that were looked at that weren't deemed feasible?
We looked at, so there's a website where, realtors direct you to called LoopNet when you're looking for commercial property.
That's where I looked earlier today, yeah.
So, yeah, so, we looked at a building on Stagecoach that's just a shell. Really lovely building, but I mean, doesn't even have HVAC units, plumbing.
Oh, we would have to do all that.
You lease the building and you go in and you make it, you put the bathrooms where you want. That was
No.
just, and it had a parking for maybe us here in this room, and that's it.
It's right across from Hernandez.
It's right across from Hernandez.
Yeah,
We were
I've
excited when we
seen-
saw the picture of it because it looked so promising, and then we got there and it's a shell.
Literally a shell.
Then we went over to, if you're familiar with where Austin Heart Hospital doctors
I know.
are,
Mhm.
Live Oak
Know
Health
who that
Clinic. We looked at San Marcos Business
Greater Partnership.
Greater Partnership.
Oh, I know where that is.
They're moving out.
Yeah.
Well, that's only like 2,500 square feet. But on the other side of that doctor's, there's like 3,500 square feet. So we thought, okay, well, maybe, even though we don't want to, we'd split people up and kind of make it work. But the Greater San Marcos Partnerships building is beautiful. The other one,
Not so much.
Not so much. It was in pretty bad shape. So we would have to do some stuff in there. And then walking, it was a pretty far walk. So if you're in finance over here and you need human resources, we could have made it work in a pinch. Then behind that Live Oak, in a 2-story building, there was probably 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, also unfinished. I mean, not even sheetrock on the wall. So we'd have to go in and build it out, which could take months. Talking permitting.
9 to 12 months at least.
Yeah.
It took us like 9 to do my office.
Yeah. And there is a lot of office space like that in San Marcos, just unfinished. Brand new buildings. They look beautiful from the outside, but not something. So then we went to the one off Mill Street toward where the railroad tracks are.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting concept, and we actually got excited about it. When you walk in, you know, community action
Yes, right
is in
there.
there. There's a water softener company. But what we would have had to do is walk through that hallway and rent, you know, this 1,300 square feet, and then go down and rent this other 1,200, and then go down the hall and have 1,000 here. And we would have been renting a bunch of storefronts. We would have all been in the same hallway, but we would have kind of zigzagged through their building. So then,
Before you go on to the next one, if you were gonna move on, what was the cost difference between the option that you just gave with the shared hallway and the different office fronts, and then the one that is being recommended?
gosh, I don't.
This one was, I think one of them was $130 a square foot, and then the one that we're looking at is
$1.30.
I mean,
$1.30.
$1.30. The bill, office reno number.
Oh, actually, I'm standing corrected. The one that was the big one was actually $1.75 a square foot, and the one that we're looking at is $1.50 a square foot. So it's actually cheaper.
So, so then he said, well, I have this building. That's the third building down, if y'all'd like to look at it. And we were like, sure, let's go. And when we walked in, it was pretty exciting to think of everyone being, after everything we had looked at and thought about toughing it out and splitting everybody up where they're going to be all over the place. Because there's a lot of 1,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet, but that's going to require, and then it requires technology to go in there and get each place up and running. And so Henry, and I apologize that I don't even know his last name.
Oles.
Okay.
Old, very easy.
Very nice man. He also doesn't do a triple net lease. He does a straight lease. So that was a perk, and he seems really flexible to work with us on anything.
I don't know what a triple net is. They don't know.
Yeah. Explain triple net, never heard of that term.
So most landlords want to include the cost of, you have your $1.50 a square foot, and then on top of that, there is taxes, insurance, and maintenance that they would add on to that. He doesn't do that. It's $1.50 a square foot, and
Everything's included in there.
everything's included.
And that one is pretty much ready to be set up.
That's what's so great about it. He had a call center in there that I think what he told us is they were a call center for the Attorney General's office, and they lost their contract, and they just like all
Left
stood up
everything.
and walked out. They left furniture
Wow.
Cubicles.
All right.
that we can use, and the building's in good shape. We're gonna have to do some modifications, but it's gonna be very minor, very minor.
Good.
When you think about building out an entire building that we were looking at, and even the building that we looked at over by Live Oak was gonna require a lot of work. This one is, we could move into it as it is, but we need doors for safety, walking into the main part of the building. We've got to move HR's giant file system over there. There's one room that's a conference room there where the carpet is really bad. Just sitting there today, I could smell it. It needs to, I mean, but those are minor things. We're gonna have to build an office for, the superintendent and Georgianne in one of the, larger rooms. But that's just putting up, you know, a
wall.
false wall,
Like this.
basically.
And what about computers? Wiring?
Mr. Hubenak went over there with us today at 2:00. What was great is it was a wired call center. Everybody in those cubicles
Yeah.
was on the computer, so they have an MDF room, and him and his staff looked at it and think they can get us
Good
up
to
and
go?
running. We're gonna have to
Wow.
get with Time Warner to
is
see if they can
great.
take a service over there. We're gonna have to pull service from this building, take it out there. That'll be a cost. The move shouldn't be a huge cost. That's, you know, we can move this building and TLA in one day.
Y'all can use my truck. I'm just not available.
Mr. Elizondo has a question.
Come on.
We have, on the agenda item, it
Get a
says some
couch.
budgetary considerations, and I'm about ready to make a motion. But as far as the dollar amount that is given on our item for action, so you obviously said that you'd have to build, the superintendent, Georgianne, some type of space or partition or something like that,
Partition.
working with Time Warner, but facilities and technology has gone through the building, and because this dollar amount that's on here is the rent, it's not the improvements that are gonna have to be made, and my concern is that I motioned to approve this tonight, and then there's a $50,000 fund balance withdrawal here and a 75,000 fund balance withdrawal there, and, you know, things happen, but I mean, without having that listed,
Right.
I don't know.
And
So I'm wondering if there's a ballpark figure or what staff kind of foresees the cost being above the monthly rent.
I absolutely cannot speak to the bringing in of Time Warner. I know that Greg is back there. He might could.
Yeah, he's right
He's
there.
coming.
I cannot speak to that.
He
I
heard his
think
name.
for our part, as far as getting the building ready, moving HR's giant file system, I could throw a number out there, but I'll let you.
No, I'll let you. Throw one.
I think that it'll be, how much was it when we moved Monica's file system over there? It was like $12,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say between 10 and
Now
12.
hers was a big old dinosaur. That thing was
This one's
huge.
not small.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that'll be.
Can we use your truck?
12,000.
Use my truck,
Go
it'll
ahead.
save $12,000.
I say $30,000.
Need a pallet jack.
How many tons does it
I'm gonna
hold?
say
I don't know.
40.
Do you have your hand up?
That's just,
30 to 40.
that's just moving costs.
Moving cost, or,
And to
does that
set up the
include
building.
setting
And
it
that's
up,
the
setting it
setting up
up?
the building.
Are
Okay.
you talking about building the offices?
Yes.
Well, you
Yes.
could
Building
say
the
with
office
the
is
addition,
30.
not to,
Let's say 30.
well, you could say that, and if necessary, bring back
Come back
an
and
amendment
explain
to it.
why.
Yeah, but, you know, I think that, I trust them, I think they're going to be as frugal as you
Yes.
can when it comes to
And I
moving.
Because we
agree.
want to keep in mind that this is a temporary.
Very
this
much
is-
so.
This is temporary, so we don't want to.
Spend a lot of money to begin
We don't want
with.
to we want to make it nice enough for central office to walk in there and be proud to go to work every day, but we want all of them to remember this is temporary. And it's a nice building. It's
Yeah.
a very nice building.
Ms. Hanson?
Well, on that note, I move that the board approve the relocation of central office and permit the superintendent to negotiate a contract at the, I guess, suggested or recommended $11,190 per month. And then for relocation and improvement costs separately not to exceed $35,000. I don't know if I have a
Do I have
second
a
to that,
second?
but we'll see.
What about your technology?
The technology and a little bit of equipment that we need in order to light up the building. The main thing we need is that network connectivity. Best case scenarios, we believe that Time Warner, or there's fiber in the building.
I can do
So it's
that.
not-
I'll amend it to 50.
We hope that we're not having to build fiber. Most likely, we'll just simply have a monthly recurring charge for a service or a circuit. Those large circuits like that can be expensive. Haven't had a chance to talk to them because we don't lease those types of circuits from them today. But it could be significant. Could be $1,000 to a couple $1,000s a month for a gigabit Ethernet service. So
I mean, AT&T.
that's, you know, at least
We're not gonna get
at least
anything.
$1,000. So there are service charges that we have to consider.
But those,
There's
I think
phone
those service charges should be separate from what we're talking about. We're talking about the rent and we're talking about moving.
Relocation expenses.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that should be separate, because that's gonna be a
Like a
monthly.
utilities
Yeah,
thing that
that's
we
gonna
talk
be a
about
monthly
later.
charge.
Change
Right,
providers,
right.
they'll probably do it for
It'll
free.
only be a fee charge for,
Maybe it's
we're in it for a couple of years, subsequent years, after June of next year, we can receive 80% discount for that service. Because we'll fold it into E-rate costs.
E-rate.
all right.
Mrs. Viapondo, will you withdraw your second? Because I think I'm going to amend my motion per some comments being
I'll
made.
withdraw it.
Thank you.
You can go.
Okay, so I move that we approve the relocation of central office and permit the superintendent to negotiate a contract not exceeding 12 months and for the $11,190 per month with $50,000 in associated moving expenses,
Is that okay?
not to exceed that.
Why are you doing 12 months?
Because we don't want to do a 3-year. I
We'll
mean,
have
that's
to
what it was
renew every
initially
year.
offered,
I
because
thought-
we may
I
be
thought
able to
we-
get back in this thing in 12 months. We don't want to be stuck with a lease. We got to buy out.
Yeah.
Will they
I thought she said
accept
they
12
would only
months?
take it for 2 years.
Oh, that's right.
I don't think he'll do 12 months. I think the
Yeah.
minimum
Said
he
2
will do is
years.
2 years.
Are we being
One of y'all said
videoed?
2 years.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, whatever the board authorizes, that provides Mr. Cardona, the room he needs to be able to negotiate with the building owner. And we're meeting in 2 weeks. So, I mean, they could have an agreement in principle that varied somewhat from our authorization, and you just have to let him know that we would have to bless it at our next meeting. But I don't want a 3-year lease, at least individually, because I don't want to be, I want to, we don't have to be renters. We have money. And, we need to fix this building up, so,
Or Bill new.
I think 2 years.
yeah.
I thought
If he
someone
said
said
2
that
years,
it
I
had to
think
be
it
for a
needs-
2-year period.
Yeah, that's what he had said. He wouldn't do it for a minimum of a 2-year because it takes a lot to.
Yeah.
For us
Well, he's
to go
not-
in, it takes that long to get you
He's
settled
not really
in.
gonna do anything, right? He's just, we're gonna have to fix a few
He's
things.
taking down a whole bunch of cubicles for us.
Oh, okay.
Painting a bunch of walls.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Let's try this
So,
a third
try
time.
try another motion.
I move that we approve the relocation of central office and permit the superintendent to negotiate a contract not to exceed 24 months or $11,199 per month for rent and not to exceed $50,000 in associated moving expenses.
I second that
Ms.
motion.
Viapondo, seconds.
Is that okay?
We ready? Any more discussion? I think we asked
Can we
all the
vote?
questions. All in favor? 6. Any opposed? No. 6-0.
It's costing 2 GT specialists a month. to run
Yep.
that thing.
Is that it?
More deficit, more deficit.
I'll entertain a motion
I
for
move that we
adjournment.
adjourn.
Second.
Kathy made the motion. Arredondo seconded. Oh, gave it to Margie. Margie seconds. All in favor? 6-0. Meeting adjourned.